Hi there, you guys. So sorry again, it's been a while since I've done a video. I've literally just been coming down from having a sinus infection. You can probably still hear it in my voice, and I've still got like a sinus headache pretty much all right here in my head. And as well, I'm actually in the middle of my last month and a half of college ever, hopefully. So I promise after I'm done school, I want to do more of these videos, so hopefully I can actually bunker down and get my schoolwork done. But I did want to quickly talk about the Oscars, because I feel like, the Oscars are this big event that our culture really sort of rallies around, and it's the one thing I think it's the one thing in the year besides the Super Bowl that people kind of really get around the television, and they're like, oh, we're actually excited to watch this, although in recent years it's become sort of a, oh, I'm too cool to watch the Oscars kind of thing. And it's not really that I disagree with that idea, but I think it's just mainly that people feel that the Oscars have become out of touch with what we think relevant films are and what we as a general movie-going audience think good films are. The Oscars, obviously, it's voted by members of the Academy, which tend to be basically their fellow the people who work in the industry, their fellow actors, fellow directors, fellow screenwriters, cinematographers, everything like that. Like, they're all people who work in the industry, but they seem to have this really sort of pretentious air about them and this really classy level of like, oh, we only nominate the really sophisticated, pretentious films, and we'll never nominate, a comic book movie for a prestigious Oscar other than visual effects. So what I wanted to focus on was actually that I was kind of surprised by the Oscars this year, in that I think a lot of people were sort of just taken aback, I think, by the fact that it really wasn't much of a big production this year. Ellen DeGeneres was the host, and she really, I think, sort of played down the whole seriousness and the whole, I don't necessarily want to say she didn't make it classy, but like it made it feel more like something that's actually kind of fun. I feel like the Oscars do take themselves way too seriously sometimes, and it really is just a night to honor good filmmaking, and just a night to honor people who've done really good work. So I think sometimes they lose sight of that, and they take themselves way too seriously, and they make this really big production out of it. And she just kind of brought it down to a more human and relatable level this year, and I kind of like that. I didn't necessarily laugh at all her jokes, and I didn't, other than her opening speech, or her opening monologue, I didn't really laugh at her jokes all that much. I did kind of like the pizza joke, but that's just kind of like, it goes on for so long that eventually you just kind of start laughing at it because it's just like, oh god, it's still going. In any case, I liked Ellen's hosting of the event, and the main reason I wanted to talk about this is because there were 11 categories in particular that I had predictions for, and I think I got about 9 out of those 11 right. I wanted 12 Years a Slave to win for Best Picture, for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay. I wanted Lupita Nyong'o to win Supporting Actress, which I was so happy she did. I didn't think Fassbender was going to win for Best Supporting Actor. I don't think, especially considering the people he was going up against, I don't necessarily think he was the best performance out of the people that were nominated. Actually, in relation to last year's Oscars, which I was looking at the nominee list for Best Picture this year and the one from last year, and I kind of wanted to compare how many films from last year I saw to this year, and I actually saw considerably less movies that were nominated this year. Like last year, I saw probably about, I want to say 70% of the films that were nominated for Best Picture. So I think maybe, I don't know why I said 70%. I basically out of the 9 or 10 that were nominated, I saw 6 or 7 of them. So this year, I think I only saw maybe like 4 or 5 of them. So I saw considerably less. And the one movie that I did not see that pretty much swept the Oscars this year was Gravity. I still haven't seen it. That's a film that I didn't really put on my list of films I desperately wanted to see. From everything that people had told me about it, it sounded very much like this year's Avatar. Like, nothing against Avatar. It's a perfectly fine movie, but when that Oscars season was going around, I had seen Avatar and I had seen The Hurt Locker, and I desperately wanted The Hurt Locker to win Best Picture. You know, I was perfectly fine with Avatar taking, you know, visual effects, production design, art direction, you know, things like that. I was fine with it taking home those awards because those are the awards that it deserved to take. It was beautiful. It's a stunning movie to look at. But when it came to the actual story and the overall movie, my general my general criteria for a best picture nomination really is more about, is this a movie that I think is important? Do I think it's a film that people should see? Like, there are films that, you know, oh my god, you should see Avengers because it's just so bombastic and it's awesome and it's got awesome fight scenes, whatever, and if you're a comic book nerd, it's amazing. But I don't see that as like a societal thing where like I consider it important to understand the context of our history, the art itself, and I think to understand the filmmaker as an artist. I really like Steve McQueen as a director. I think I made that pretty obvious in my Shame review, which I think is the only movie of his I've reviewed on this on this channel. But I've also seen his previous movie Hunger, and his films are very much about struggle and determination and this sense of almost self-deprecation at some point. But it's a very rewarding way of doing it, but it makes you feel really bad about it as you're going through it. And you get that through Hunger, you get that through Shame, and you also get that through 12 Years a Slave. 12 Years a Slave was obviously based on the memoirs of Solomon Northup, who was actually taken from the North and put into slavery in the South in Louisiana. And I think that is an important story to tell because it's still relevant in this day and age. We still have an issue with racism. I live in one of the most diverse countries in the world, and we can still have racism problems. You know, I have Italian family members, well, yeah, technically I'm related to them now, who are racist, you know, but they're old, they're senile, and it was part of the generation that they grew up in. And sometimes their mentality can still leak down into their children, and sometimes they continue to take it with them, and they do things subconsciously that are racist, and they still think that way. I do think 12 Years a Slave is an incredibly relevant film. I think after seeing it, it really sort of highlighted the difference between watching a movie like Django Unchained, which is another movie based in a similar time period, which has very similar themes, but it has a totally different tone than a movie like 12 Years a Slave. It really highlights those differences because when you watch a movie like Django, you kind of get this understanding of, yes, slavery is cruel and there's really hard things that you have to look at about the culture that was going on back then. It's like, it's easy to draw parallels between how we acted back then and how some people still act now. It's just they do it on a much more subversive level because they can't come out right and say, you know, the N-word. They can't do it anymore. So they have to constantly subvert the political correctness of our society now, and they have to constantly insert their hatred and their bigotry in a way that can be misconstrued. They're going to be like, no, you're seeing it incorrectly. It's like, no, you are racist. You're just trying to subvert that in a way that could possibly in some way be misinterpreted.
You got to get in there, and I don't know if you guys see the urgency of that.
Well, of course the president does, and he said this afternoon, look, we all have a role that we can play here. This is not a big government program. In fact, the government's role is rather minor, and it requires accountability. It requires people to step up to the plate and work hard and stay in school and excel and dream, but it also requires a community around them to provide a safety net. But he also told them, look, boys, you're going to have to work hard, and you're going to have to act responsibly. And that message has to get across,
but you have to attack the fundamental disease if you want to cure it. Now, I submit to you that you're going to have to get people like Jay-Z, Kanye West, all of these gangster rappers to knock it off. That's number one.
What I think these boys need is, they need positive role models, which you said.
Listen to me. You got to get where they live. all right? They had idolized these guys with the hats on backwards and the terrible rap lyrics and a drug and all of that. You got to get these guys. And I think President Obama can do it. And you got to put them on TV and the net, and they got to say, knock it off. This is wrong. You've got to get them all. And then you got to get the president and the first lady and every other profile. You had Magic Johnson there today. He's a good guy. And you got a bunch of these guys. And you got to barrage, and make it uncomfortable to have a baby out of wedlock. Make it uncomfortable to sell drugs. You got to reverse the peer pressure. You see where I'm coming from?
Of course they know this.
It's these gangster rappers, it's the athletes, it's the tattoo guys. You got to get them in there to tell these kids that you got to stop the destructive behavior. You're going to wind up in a morgue or in prison.
I think don't underestimate those children. That's the person they should have. The First Lady, an outstanding role model for the young people.
I want you to tell her something from me tonight. Okay. I like the nutrition thing. I like the garden. I think that's all good.
Healthy eating. Let's
I want
move.
Michelle Obama
Exercise.
to come on this program. Right here. And I want Michelle Obama to look into that camera and say, you teenage girls, you stop having sex. You stop getting pregnant. This is wrong. I want her to do that right here. Do you think she would?
But getting back to the differences between a movie like Django and a movie like 12 Years a Slave, when you compare the two, Django is a cartoon. It is an editorial cartoon of what that time period was like and how everyone acted. But when you look at something like 12 Years a Slave, it's like a finely detailed oil painting that has been painted over the course of years. It is so well crafted, and it is so well described, and it is so well envelops the world, and you so understand the hardship, not only of the slaves, but you also understand, but especially the people like Benedict Cumberbatch's character. I forget what his name was, but he wasn't the type of slave owner that acted in a way that we would typically expect. Fassbender's character is much more the religious fundamentalist who believes that he has some sort of divine right to have control over another group of people, whereas Benedict Cumberbatch is much more on the level, and he sees black people more as his common man than as his property. Though he does still see them as property. Like, that's the problem with it. It's like he's still racist and he is still a slave owner, but there are shades of it. Like, you can see that there are people who are clearly not as enveloped in the whole idea of it as others. That there are some people who own slaves and they try to make life easier for those slaves, because if they didn't, they would probably end up on a farm that was owned by someone who was much more extreme. And it's nice to see that kind of diversity, at least among the slave owners, because it gives it a much more richer palette. It makes us understand how hard it really was back then, and how difficult it was to make those certain kinds of decisions, and what it was really like. And that's not to say that I'm sympathizing with slave owners, but if anything, it's making me feel differently about what it's like to be a slave, because there are some people who are looking out for your best interests, and there are some people who aren't. And it really is this sort of, it paints the whole situation in different ways, and you don't just see it as one blanket issue anymore, and you see it you see it differently. You see the context of the actual situation, and not just, here are slave owners, here are slaves. All the slave owners act one way, all the slaves act this way. They also paint the slaves in different ways. There are some slaves who are willing to just bow their heads and do what they're going to do just so that they can survive and so that they can live. And then you have others that are willing to die to get free and to get out of slavery, like Solomon was. He was so close to losing his life so many times just because he wanted to get back to his family and he wanted to be free again. It shows a lot of that diversity, and it shows a lot of those different views at the time. I also wanted to mention that the female acting in that movie was absolutely amazing. Like, Lupita Nyong'o, who I said I really wanted her to win the Best Supporting Actress, and I was so glad she did at the Oscars this year. I like the idea that the Academy is becoming sort of less, I don't necessarily want to say colorblind, but I don't feel like you should just give awards to people just because you feel like you should be giving awards to a minority, or to one. You should be giving it to a female just because you haven't given it to a female before. Like, give it to somebody who really deserves it, who really worked hard for it and has earned that title. But the problem is that for a very long time, the Academies has really honored a lot of white straight dudes. There have been very few who have strayed off of that path, and now we're sort of getting to a stage where it's like, no, Steve McQueen deserved the Oscar for Best Picture. Like, he's also a producer on the film, so that's why he also got the award for Best Picture. But I kind of wanted him to win Best Director as well, just because I really like his directing. But from the things I've heard about Gravity, that film sounds like it's wonderfully directed. So I can totally understand him getting the director's award for that. And if it really is that his direction just flat out was better, then fine. You know, I'm perfectly okay with that. I just don't like I like the idea that now we seem to be getting to a stage where awards are given based on good performances, based on good directing, based on a good movie, not just because they have a quota to fill, not because they want to give it to somebody that's a minority, which is hilarious. That, like, I think the Best Direction award has only been given once to a woman, and it was Catherine Bigelow for The Hurt Locker. And to me, that's kind of funny, but, you know, what, to each his own. Again, I'm not asking that they nominate more. Well, no, I kind of am asking that they nominate more women who have directed movies, but the problem is that it's very hard for women to break into filmmaking in a directing way for major films that get recognized, that have a lot of backing, that are widely recognized. So it's a little trickier. I hope we get to that stage soon where, you know, women become just as common in the director's chair as it is for men, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I was overall very happy about the award distribution this year. I do think Gravity took home quite a bit, especially considering I haven't seen it, but for everything that it did get, it would make sense based on the things I've heard. You know, I've heard it looks beautiful. I've heard the 3D is astounding. I've heard it has good music. I've heard the cinematography is really good, you know, and from the things I've seen in terms of trailers and clips and this, that, and the other thing, it seems really well done. And I could have potentially have seen Sandra Bullock taking home the Best Actress, but it went to Cate Blanchett, who was also in a movie that I had not seen. I didn't see Blue Jasmine. Like, there's a lot of movies I didn't see this year. There was one thing I did want to address, because someone I have on Facebook kind of brought it up, and it was the performance by Idina Menzel for the song "Let It Go" in Frozen. And I've heard Idina Menzel's live performances. I've seen her in various musicals. I've known of her work since her Rent days, and I used to be a musical theater kid. Like, I used to do musical theater when I was younger, so I was really into that stuff. And she's wonderful live, and she sings beautifully live. Her performance was not at its best during the Oscars. You know, she sounded kind of off. It was very nasally in a weird, like, kind of the way I'm talking now. You can hear the nasally thing I've got going on. It could have been that she was really nervous. It could have been that she was sick. It could have been she was thrown off by the fact that John Travolta screwed up her name. I don't even want to talk about that because the internet has already done a good enough job of talking about that. But in any case, it's not her best performance. But I think, I honestly believe that the Oscars go above and beyond when it comes to the performances for the best original song nominations. I actually don't really like that they spread that nomination over the course of the whole show and that they, like, break it up. I would rather they just, you know, play maybe a 30-second clip from the movie at the Oscars. Like, or if anything, you know, play the clip that the movie is from and then maybe have the live performance go along with it. But I don't really like the idea that they so heavily focus at least what seems to be 20 minutes worth of the Oscars towards these performances. Like, to me, it just seems like a waste of time. I'm not really interested. Those are the things that I just kind of get up and I go away. Especially because I wasn't really into the other songs that were nominated this year. I genuinely believe Let It Go was the best song that was nominated. I'm not really into Happy, the one that Pharrell Williams did for Despicable Me 2. I'm really not into that song. Like, it's kind of catchy, but it's not the type of song I'm into. Like, that's really not my kind of music. U2's song wasn't bad. It was just kind of, I don't know, something about it just ring very generic for me. Like, it just, to me, it just kind of sounds like a lot of other U2's other songs. And I'm not saying that U2's bad, but it's just like, you could have picked a song from pretty much any of a lot of their other albums, and it would have fit probably. And then the one that was from her, I don't even remember what that song was called, but even, yeah, that one too. Like, I'm really not a fan of, like, slow acoustic guitar kind of stuff like that. It was really just too slow. I think Let It Go has been a phenomenon to an extent where I think it's a phenomenon in a good way, where, like, people are taking the message of Let It Go and they are just running with it. They are so behind it. And even if people don't like the movie, if people weren't, like, thrilled with the Disney movie, a lot of people are basically saying the one good thing about it is the song Let It Go. I think it's a good, strong song. It's one of the best Disney songs we've had in a while. Like, I would say a long time. I can't remember a Disney song that has been that catchy at least since the 90s. Like, I like Princess and the Frog. I like Tangled. But the closest I would say is I See the Light in Tangled. I feel like Let It Go took a lot of its inspiration for that particular scene from I See the Light. But I think Let It Go did it kind of better, in a sense that, like, I See the Light was basically just, oh, I've lived my dream and now you are my dream. Like, it kind of is the point in every Disney movie where a girl is dreaming about the thing that she wants, and then suddenly her dream turns into being in a romance with this guy and running off and getting married to him. You know, it happens in most Disney movies. But what I really liked about Frozen is they really subvert a lot of those Disney cliches, and they kind of turn your head on a lot of that. And Let It Go was just genuinely a song about, I give no fucks anymore, you know, of screw the expectations people have of me. I'm just gonna be myself, and it's kind of nice, you know. It's just nice to have a song like that is that catchy and is that fun to sing along with, even if you can't necessarily sing it. We haven't had one of those in a long time, and I See the Light is very pretty, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's catchy, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's one of those, like, singable Disney songs that we've had. We have had Under the Sea, we've had Be Our Guest, we've had I'll Make a Man Out of You, which I think is my personal favorite. Like, that's the funnest song to sing along with, especially with a group of girls. I don't know why, but it's always really fun to sing I'll Make a Man Out of You with other women. It's just incredibly fun to me. Those are really fun, catchy songs. The last couple of Disney musicals that we've had haven't really had that, and Let It Go, I feel like, was the first time we're kind of getting back to that sort of nostalgic feeling for us for the Disney fans, especially for my generation. Otherwise, I think a lot of the Oscars are very well deserved. You know, I was really happy that Great Gatsby got its awards for what I think it deserved. You know, it deserved costume design awards. The costumes in that film were absolutely stunning. Like, I did my review on that movie, but I love the production design of the movie. I love the costume designs in that movie. The movie really is about style over substance, so it got the awards that it deserves in that regard. So I've got to say, actually, this was probably one of those Oscar years where it's like there's not really much rage from, like, there's been previous years where it's like I am totally boggled by what the Oscars pick as, you know, best this, best that, best whatever. But this year, I think they did an actually pretty good job with doling out the awards. You know, even with the actors and the actresses and the Best Picture, you know, there's a lot of good nominations, and it really could have gone to a bunch of different people. Dallas Buyers Club, I thought was a really good film, and I'm kind of happy that Matthew McConaughey got recognition for that, because I think he's a genuinely talented actor. He's just kind of been stiffed a lot, and he's kind of recognized and he's pigeonholed a lot for certain particular roles that he's been in the past. But it seems like now he's really coming out of that, and he's really being taken much more seriously as a reputable actor. Leonardo DiCaprio, I feel so bad that guy still hasn't won an award, but Wolf of Wall Street was not the best performance of the year. it's a good performance. It is a damn good performance, but it is not the best performance of the year. And I feel like Leonardo DiCaprio has had better performances. So overall, I'm happy with the Oscars. I think it was actually a pretty good year. I think it wasn't a terrible year for movies. Again, I didn't see as many as I would have liked to this year, but from what I've seen, I was pretty happy with the movies that we had, and I think it's just kind of making me excited for the movies that are coming out this year, you know, especially for Marvel fans. We have Captain America coming out. We have Guardians of the Galaxy coming out. I'm just excited for a lot of different things that are coming out. I originally wanted to do a discussion video on the Fantastic Four casting, but my audio completely screwed up when I recorded it, and it ended up corrupting my entire file, so I couldn't end up putting it out, and I'm like, you know what, it's been a week, no one's talking about this anymore, let's just move on. So I just scrapped the whole thing. So that's about it. I am going to get back to homework. I'm going to get over this sinus infection. I will see you guys probably not for a couple of weeks because I really have to finish my schoolwork. I really have to get freaking done with college. I've been in school for freaking 7 years. In college for 7 freaking years. I am done with it. No mas. No mas. So, I'll probably start putting out more regular reviews sometime in mid to late April. Maybe starting in early May, depending on what's going on in that time of my life. So, hopefully I'll get to more reviews and I'll be seeing a lot more movies. X-Men Days of Future Past is coming out soon. And so are a lot of more movies, and I'm so freaking excited. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you later. Peace.